So I'm gonna call the meeting to order now. I think I have to read this thing from the governor before I do, though. Is that right, Dan? If you can come on for a sec.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to read that thing, I guess, if you want to be formal.
Yeah, absolutely. So give me 1 second here. Let me pull it up. Um, okay, so welcome everybody to the April 13th meeting of the Mendon Economic Development Committee. Here are several elected officials and officials of government to talk about small business issues. We're currently doing this remotely due to the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. Due to an order of the governor passed on March 10th, 2020, I'm just gonna read the Spark Notes version of this. The governor authorized public bodies to meet via remote participation, subject to certain limitations. What we're doing right now meets those requirements. So, I'd like to begin by introducing some of the people we have here. We have Todd Gleason, Tony Jenna, and Mazar and myself are from the Mendon Economic Development Committee. Kevin Kuros is from the Massachusetts Office of of Small Business Development. Jeannie Hebert's here from the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce. Representative Brian Murray is here. Bob Nelson from the Federal Small Business Administration, and John, sorry if I pronounced this wrong, John Niedzowski from Congressman
That's pretty
McGovern's
good.
office. Did I get it? Almost.
Pretty close.
So, and also Selectman Monty Tinio from the Mendon Select Board as well. So, and also Bob Sweet, who's a business owner in town. Other business owners might be going on as well. So I kind of wanted to start off by talking about what I consider the most pressing thing, which is the stimulus package that was passed by the federal government and what it actually contains for small businesses. So I'm going to ask if Bob Nelson could speak for a few moments about that. That would be awesome.
Sure. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So it's a pleasure for me. Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you. What's going on? I'm getting an awful lot of feedback, and it's really difficult for me to hear.
Okay, hold on. Let me try it now.
Sure. So yeah, that's much better. So again, Bob Nelson with the Small Business Administration. I'm the director of the SBA for Massachusetts. So again, a pleasure to be here just to give a brief update as far as SBA and what's going on. I think all of you realize that the Paycheck Protection Plan program and the other provisions in the CARES Act signed by the president, it's very much a work in progress, and we continue to get new guidance every day. Every day I learn new things. On the Treasury website, there were several new FAQs that were posted. I haven't even had a chance to look at those yet, but those will also make their way onto the SBA site. But let me just talk about a couple different things. So the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which became available on March 18th, I would encourage small businesses and nonprofits to apply for the economic injury loans. They would be applied for at sba.gov/disaster. Every day I continue to see new SBA economic injury loans get approved. They are getting approved. The SBA responds to those on a first come, first served basis since the time that Massachusetts got its declaration in all 50 states, with everyone in the country applying for these. The original guidance where they were talking about 21 days for a decision, it's probably being extended, but I certainly did see a number of Massachusetts approvals that were less than 21 days. And again, under the SBA economic injury loan, it's loans up to $2 million. It's for small businesses, it's an interest rate of 3.75% fixed for the life of the loan. It's for working capital purposes, for small businesses to have capital to meet their obligations that they otherwise would have been able to meet had the disaster not occurred. So it's really intended to be a disaster recovery program and a lifeline for small businesses to meet their working capital needs. What you should remember is that SBA's economic injury loans, unlike the PPP loan program, it's applied for directly with the SBA through sba.gov/disaster. The application period runs through the middle of December. So there's some businesses might not know the full extent of their economic injury. If a business applies for it and gets approved for an economic injury loan, depending on how long this goes on for, and if their economic injury increases, they can ask for increases to the economic injury loan. So just know that the deadline for applying for those, it's way out there in the future. As part of the CARES Act, the SBA got money for an economic injury disaster loan advance, which is a grant of up to $10,000. SBA just came out with guidance that it is being calculated at $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000 max. I know that there are some folks out there who thought that it was an automatic $10,000. The SBA, in trying to figure out how many people it could serve across the entire country, given the budget and the limitations on the funding, it came out with guidance that it was $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000 max. We heard last Thursday that the advances would start to go out within 24 hours. I was on a call earlier today. It was told that some of the advances started going out on Friday, over the weekend. So this is something that small businesses should be looking for in the accounts and with the bank routing number that they used when they applied for the economic injury disaster loan advance. If a business did not apply for the SBA's economic injury loan and to request the advance after from March 30th going forward, they should go back in at sba.gov/disaster, and to reapply, it will only take them a couple minutes. It's a much streamlined, easier process, but this way you can potentially get some of that advance money, which does not have to be repaid. As far as the Paycheck Protection Program, it's a $350 billion program. On a call that I was on earlier today, they were talking about $200 billion plus in approvals nationwide. So certainly the money is getting approved with, I look at the Massachusetts approvals, many thousands of Massachusetts businesses have been approved for Paycheck Protection Plan loans for many millions of dollars. And I don't have state-specific loan numbers. They're supposed to be coming out with a dashboard with state numbers, but I look at the approvals on a daily basis. We continue to see a tremendous amount of activity. I look at lenders from all across the Commonwealth, small lenders, community banks, regional banks, larger banks. I can tell you that our lenders have done an enormous job in trying to put all these applications through in just a little bit more than a week at this point in time. So it really is an incredible amount of work on the part of a lot of lenders here in Massachusetts trying to get these approvals. And I know that lenders are funding these loans. They're getting the money into the hands of small businesses. These loans are administered through SBA banks. We have a listing of 150 different PPP authorized lenders on the Massachusetts SBA site, which is sba.gov/MA. And so I know that we're trying to identify lenders who will entertain loans from non-customers. On this call that I was just on, they did mention a couple different fintechs that will be accepting applications. So Intuit was mentioned, PayPal was mentioned. I have no idea whether they have stood up their programs yet, but these are some national players where businesses will be able to, make applications for PPPs in the near future once they get their processes and systems up to board. But there's no doubt that this program is very much in demand, significant interest. I think probably everyone saw that our elected officials are looking at the possibility of additional funding for PPP, and so we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But I know that there has been real strong demand, and I would consider it to be historic here in Massachusetts with the volume and number of approvals in just a short period of time. I do want to mention and just really stress the whole purpose of the Paycheck Protection Plan program. It is, as its name says, paycheck protection. And the purpose of the program is to give small businesses funds so that they can either bring people back onto their payroll. Once they get their initial disbursement, they start using the funds to meet their payroll obligations for 8 weeks. And if they have not furloughed or let employees go, maintain those employees and not reduce them. That way, potentially 100% of the loan, which goes up to $10 million, is going to be forgiven. That's the way that I would look at it if I was a small business. What is the forgivable portion of the loan? So you look at your average monthly payroll, multiply by 2.5 times. You can use 25% of the funds for mortgage interest or rent or utilities. The 75% of the loan has to be for payroll purposes. I'm getting questions from people saying, if my business is closed, if it's not an essential business, I don't have things for employees to do. That does not matter. That is not part of the law. If the employer has some things for the employee to do and it's a non-essential business, working remotely, they can have them working from home. But the whole purpose of the PPP is to get people onto payrolls so that when this passes, and hopefully it will pass soon, businesses are going to have their workforce ready in order to open and to get back to business as soon as possible. So I'll leave it from there. I'm sure there will probably be some questions, but those are the big highlights that I wanted to make sure we went over.
Thank you. So do we have any questions from any members of the board or anybody else for Bob?
This is John from the Congressman's office. Just to, again, I just want to thank Bob and his team at Massachusetts SBA office. They've been very accessible. They've been receptive to all the questions that we have posed their way from businesses in the district. But just to build on one thing Bob said, there is plans in Washington to do more. As Bob said, the PPP program in particular, folks are really launching into that, and so clearly more money is needed. I understand that Congressman Neal, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and Secretary Mnuchin and others in D.C. are already laying the groundwork for what they're calling a 3.5 stimulus bill. And while Congress is out of session, they're in recess until May the 4th. The leadership and staff in Washington are working continually on what the next tranche of assistance will be from Washington. So at any given moment, Congress may be called back into session to vote to authorize and appropriate and get that money out the door. So we'll be staying on top of that and following that. And also, part of the CARES Act had, I believe, $1.5 billion for the Economic Development Administration. We have not seen any NOFAs out about how to get those funds out into communities, but that may be another resource for cities and towns, for regional planning organizations and others to chase for other opportunities to bring direct assistance to local small businesses. So we're going to be watching that as well. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I do have one question. I don't know if it was touched on. So what is considered a small business to be able to take advantage of these loans? You might have touched upon this, I might have missed it. Like, is it a certain amount of employees or what?
It's 500.
So this is Bob. So it's 500 employees or less, but there are other ways that a small business could potentially be considered small, depending on the industry classification code that the business is in. It might be something that is revenue driven. So if they can qualify based upon industry classification code, they certainly do that. SBA also has something that's called an alternative minimum size standard. So 5 million net income, $15 million net worth. So there's another way that a small business could potentially be considered small and to be eligible not only for the economic entry loan, but for the PPP loan. What I would just emphasize is that 98 to 99% of the businesses in Massachusetts would be considered small by SBA size standard. If there are one-off situations, we do have a website where the business information could be submitted for a size determination, but I would encourage small businesses to work with their lender and to be able to demonstrate that they're small.
All right, excellent. So does anybody else have any questions for either Bob or John? I figure we'll kind of start with federal, go to state, then regional, then local. If that's kind of I think that's kind of a good way to do it. So any questions for Bob or John? No? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the state level then with Kevin Kuros. We'd love to hear about what's going on in the state, what sort of programs have been rolled out for small businesses here in Massachusetts, and how they can get help.
So I work for the Mass Office of Business Development. We report to Secretary Mike Keneally, who is the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development. And sadly, there aren't a tremendous number of state programs that are available. The first one that came out literally sold out within a day. $10 million was made available through Mass Growth Capital Corporation in small business loans. And within 24 hours, I think we had almost $200 million worth of requests for that $10 million. So that unfortunately dried up very quickly. Mass Development, our partners at Mass Development actually contributed an additional $10 million to that same fund. But again, that was just to chip away at the backlog. The program was not going to be reopened again foreseeable future, but who knows what long-term future holds. Something that John mentioned that could be beneficial to the state, and we put the wheels in motion on this. Last week, several of us that are on this call were on a call with the Southern Worcester County Economic Development Organization, SWC EDO. And that, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a federal overlay on top of CMRPC's region. Okay. So you guys remember community in CMRPC, and what the EDOs do across the country, but across the Commonwealth, is they can act as a conduit of federal money. So John had mentioned that I think it was $1.5 billion was dedicated to the Economic Development Administration, the federal EDA, and that's divided up in 6 regions across the country. We are part of the Philadelphia region, which is the largest. So we would probably be part of larger than 1/6 of that total $1.5 billion amount of money coming in. That money can be used for things like technical assistance for businesses. And I'll just give you one example, something that we're working on. The SBA forms need to be filled out in English, and so while The instructions are available in multiple languages. Okay. You know, in some cases, for example, we had some businesses from Chinatown reaching out that they don't understand the foreign because they're not in Mandarin. Okay. So the EDA money could flow in to hire consultants to do language interpretation to help small businesses apply for the SBA loans, for example. So that's just one use of it. But the other thing that we started a conversation about was we introduced the regional rep from the federal EDA to the chairman of Mass Growth Capital Corp, which I had mentioned earlier. And so they are going to explore if there is an opportunity for Mass Growth Capital to act as a kind of a distributor of some of the money that comes in through the EDA. So those are early conversations, but as you can imagine, everything is evolving and happening pretty quickly here as well. A couple of the things we just talked about very quickly is what's available for businesses who have to make the tough decision to cut back their workforce, and obviously, you know, many of them do. It's important to make businesses aware that if they reach out to you about the WorkShare program. Is everyone on the call heard of the WorkShare program or familiar with it? If you're not, I'll just give you a real quick summary. Assume you had 5 people working for your business, and you decided you need to lay one of them off. Okay. Rather than laying one person off and keeping 4 people fully employed, what WorkShare allows you to do is essentially lay all 5 people off for 1 day a week. So all 4 of them are still getting, you know, 4 days pay, full pay. And then that 5th day, they would qualify for unemployment, which essentially keeps you about 50% whole. So they more or less, everyone would end up, you know, making, you know, 4.5 days roughly of their 5-day salary, as opposed to 4 people being kept whole and 1 person, you know, being laid off completely and, you know, having their salary cut in half. So it's a really powerful program. We recommend all businesses that do need to make that decision to at least explore that as an option. You know, some questions have been asked as to whether or not participating in the WorkShare program will negatively impact their unemployment insurance rating. You know, every business gets rated based on how often they lay people off. And where we are right now is it is considered a layoff like any other layoff relative to the business's unemployment insurance rating calculation. I know there's some talk about either an executive order, or I see Rep. Murray is on this call, maybe legislative action if it's required, to potentially change that so that businesses that take advantage of the WorkShare program, which is a great program, are not negatively impacted in their unemployment insurance rating, which obviously would, you know, would make their rates go up and be more expensive for them long term. And the last thing I'll share, and Tom, I think you're on my distribution list, and I think Jeannie is as well. Last week, CMRPC put together a wonderful tool, menu-driven tool that can be pushed out to businesses to allow them to navigate all the myriad of information that's out there. You know, whether or not you're an essential business, if you are an essential business and want to stay open, you know, the various programs are available from the federal government, that kind of thing. It's super easy to use. Tom, I believe you were on that distribution list, and Jeannie, feel free to push that out to your constituent businesses as they reach out to you, because it is the most plain English interpretation of all this stuff. I mean, some of the programs are pretty daunting, and you know, you're so busy running your business, you don't really pay attention to, you know, a lot of the blocking and tackling sometimes. And I think a lot of businesses are getting overwhelmed by all the information they're getting, and this was a really good tool. So I would encourage you to, you know, to push that on to anybody that would find it of value. So.
Do we have any questions for Kevin?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Todd Gleason. How you doing, everybody? Thanks for joining our meeting tonight. And this might be for either Kevin or Representative Murray. I saw that Senator Eldridge proposed a COVID-19 business interruption bill. I believe it was last week. It's mirroring, I think, the bill that's been presented in a number of other states, including New Jersey. I don't think any of which have passed yet. I think the insurance lobby has obviously been pretty active in fighting it because it would have retroactive effect. I think, at least in Massachusetts, I think the bill reads it would have retroactive effect to March 20th. May have been around the date that the state of emergency was declared. Just wondering whether any of you feel that that bill has legs and will get further along in the process, or whether you think that one of the issues with it is that the insurance agency has said it violates the Constitution and that it violates the contracts clause of the Constitution, because you're going back and rewriting privately negotiated insurance contracts to create coverage where most of these policies don't cover viruses and they don't cover pandemics, and many of them have clear exclusions for virus related injuries to property and otherwise. So just trying to understand whether you think that has any steam, or whether that's going to not really provide a lot of relief for small businesses or even larger businesses that would like to rely on it.
I'd invite the distinguished gentleman from Milford to offer any insight he may have there. I don't have any insight on that. I'm sorry.
I'll be glad to talk about that a little bit. I was actually involved in a conference call with Representative Jeffrey Roy about this issue with a independent insurance adjuster who brought this concern up, and then we saw the senator's bill after that. I haven't heard a whole lot of buzz about this particular bill. There's a lot more attention being focused on housing issues right now. Maybe liability shields for doctors, liability shields for the college system that is donating materials. Not to say that this isn't going anywhere, but there are a lot of bills that have been filed in a very short time to try to address this COVID-19 situation. And Kevin can understand this. Without any formal sessions, it's very difficult to get these things through. Any one representative or senator can object in an informal session. So we have two separate bills right now going off to conference committee, and I'm not real sure how those are going to get resolved. But this one is in the mix. But again, I haven't gotten any indication from leadership that this particular one is on the front burner.
Okay, well, Brian, while we have you here, is there anything coming down the pipeline in the state legislature that you said there's several things going on, but some are being held up. Do you know of anything going on in regards for more money for small business loans? I know Kevin said that the last program that came out ran out in a very short amount of time. Do you know of anything else coming down the pipeline?
Not in that regards, no. I'm trying to think that I think there are a couple of bills. I think it's Senator DeZoglio filed the bill to set up kind of a state paycheck, a paycheck protection program. But I think that was just very recently. I don't think it's gone on. I think the big focus right now, they're trying to get some resolution on the housing protections to try to prevent evictions. But there also has to be a component in there to protect the landowners, from foreclosures as well. So that's off in the conference committee right now. And that's been really kind of the major one that I can think of that's, got everyone's attention to try to get something done. I think they see that as kind of an immediacy type thing. The sense I got budget-wise is there's such uncertainty in terms of what revenues are going to be next year, and how we're even going to approach the budget this cycle. I don't get the sense that there's any real focus on broad state endorsed economic recovery programs for businesses, really relying on the Federal CARES Act and other similar acts that have come down the road or that will come down the road. There are some targeted bills for certain benefits, to I think pay time and a half or maybe double time to frontline state workers, those kinds of things, but nothing as broad based as the CARES Act.
Thank you.
Representative, the rainy day fund was in pretty good shape as we came into this. Do you know offhand if there's been any appropriations from the rainy day fund, or are they still kind of holding on to that for right now?
No appropriations. The fund right now is probably about 3.5 billion, which I guess is the largest it has ever been in the Commonwealth's history. We have passed the extension on tax filings to mirror the federal to July 15th. So that's going to create a revenue loss for the last quarter of this fiscal year. The thought is to plug that through borrowing against next year's funds. And the focus now is to try to figure out how to engineer a 2/3 vote, which is required to bond in this environment where, you really shouldn't be having formal sessions and, constitution questions as to whether or not remote voting would be allowable. But that's the thought right now as to how we're going to approach the balance of this year's budget going into next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to go on to Jeannie Hebert now, who's here with the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce. Maybe talk about any programs the Chamber of Commerce might be offering or partnering, other organizations they might be partnering with.
Sure, thanks, Tom. First, I want to thank all of you for working so hard. Bob, I know you probably have never worked so hard in your life. With the money that they're distributing in SBA, it's incredible. And thank you so much for being a lifeline to business. And John, thank you for the federal programs that you and Congressman McGovern are putting forth. It's really, again, a lifeline. And Kevin and I have the same booking agent. We're on the same phone calls and Zoom programs all the time. And just to kind of go over some of the things that he said, he was talking about the SBA applications being in English. I did get word today from Mass Growth Capital that they will help to provide translators and to translate the applications. So if you have any businesses in town that are bilingual or English is not their first language, Mass Growth Capital can help tremendously in getting the interpretation for them so that they can apply for these loans. I am working more than ever. We're taking all of this information that we're getting. We've updated our newsletters to 3 times a week for very serious information for business, and 3 times a week to update on the status of businesses, those that are open, the restaurants, what hours, the numbers, different changes in businesses like Koopmans, curbside service, things like that. We're trying to get the communication out there to keep your businesses alive. So if there's anything that you want us to put in our newsletters, please get it over to me. It's absolutely free. We are helping everyone. You do not need to be a chamber member in order for us to help you. One of the big questions that we get is about unemployment assistance and sole proprietors, as well as gig workers. They have not been able to apply for unemployment assistance. It is in the CARES Act, but what I've been told by Secretary Acosta is that they do not have the guidelines for distribution of the funding, and they're hoping by the end of the month to have all of that in place, because for the first time, sole proprietors and gig workers will be able to apply for unemployment assistance. They'll get the state, and they'll also get the $600 a week federal to help them out. It's supposed to be retroactive, and that will run through July 27th. So if you're getting any questions from sole proprietors, and many of them are really down to their last amount of money, so it cannot come soon enough. Another opportunity that I didn't hear mentioned for employees is you can offer furloughs, which they would be unpaid, so they can apply for unemployment assistance, but you would keep their health insurance intact. So, I mean, I don't think there's too many employers out there that really want to lay off or let go their employees. So this is an alternative as well. We have had some questions about insurance, but in a different manner from which Todd, you were talking about. We've, for instance, had 2 bus companies that would like some kind of reprieve from their premiums because their buses are just sitting in their bus barns. No one's getting on them. They're paying an exorbitant amount of liability insurance. So there is a governor's advisory to insurance companies to forgive premiums. So hopefully, somebody have a cuckoo clock?
That's me, Jeannie. That's
Oh.
my wife. Yeah. Yes.
That's the entertainment portion of the evening. Thank you.
Yeah, Emily would be glad to hear that you like the cuckoo clock.
Oh, now I got the dog barking here. Quiet, Bella. Okay, so, you know, we're just really working very hard to make sure that we can answer questions, that we get up to the minute information out to everyone in the Valley. We can help as much as we can. Unfortunately, I got a call today about one business that wanted to know about filing for bankruptcy. Trying to talk him out of it, to take advantage of the SBA programs because they are so generous, but you know, I hope that that's the only call I get in that respect. We have a lot of webinars running. Please check out our website for all different facets of business. We have a CEO roundtable that you're welcome to join our Zoom program. You can find it on our website, and that will be at 8:30 tomorrow morning. And we're also promoting the AIM 30-minute webinars on Thursdays. They're extremely informative. I know Bob has, and maybe John too, but I know Bob has been on a couple of them. And there's a lot of information out there. So if I can help you in any way, you can contact me at jhebert@blackstonevalley.org or call the chamber, and it rings right to my cell phone. We are very busy. The BV Ed Hub is running 24/7, printing face shields. I look like a drowned rat. That's why my picture is up, because I've been out delivering face shields to first responders and VA facilities. And so almost 2,000 now we've distributed. We have 35 schools that are in our network. BV Tech is one of them. I got 300 of the visors from BV Tech the other day, and they already went out to VA facilities. So we're doing this in Mass, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. And actually, I get a call from New Hampshire today. And in Maine, we have a nice article in the Biddeford, Maine newspaper. So if I haven't gotten them out to Mendon yet, so if you have talked to your fire department or your police department, they would like some, just send me how many they'd want and we'll get them delivered. We have some volunteer drivers too, so. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
So, anyone? No, you? Okay. Lonnie, I know you're not just a selectman, you're also a business owner, so you kind of have a unique perspective on this. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thanks everybody for putting this meeting together, and thanks everybody at the SBA and across the board, the state, federal levels. It's been super helpful. It was very exciting to me as a business owner, very exciting to a lot of local business owners who I interact with on a daily basis, not only either handling their IT needs or just talking in general to see how everybody's doing. So far, Mendon seems to be pretty good. I haven't, the people that I work with on a daily basis are all still functioning, all still going, making adjustments on the fly to be able to keep their businesses alive, and everybody seems to be in decent shape. The PPP is huge, and the fact that just the process from the get-go was a little bit slow, but that was basically the local banks. I don't know if they were nervous or what it was, but they were just a touch slow on getting, a few of them were getting moving with the applications. I'll say that once my application was accepted, the next day I was told it was in the portal, and 2 days after that, the money was in the bank. So that's how fast you can get your payroll protection money. And that's huge for the businesses around here. Being able to take that burden off and be able to keep all of your employees on staff, whether or not they're there or not, was great. There's a little bit, except I think it was Bob, thank you for touching more on that, because there was confusion. There is still confusion or just misinformation that's running around out there that was based on, when you were doing your calculations for your times 2.5, what was the 0.5 for, or what was the amount? So now that it's nice to know that 25% is the 75% is for payroll, and 25% is for pretty much everything else that's listed on there. There was, again, a lot of, is this a loan forgiven? What's the deal? What's this? What's that? There was a lot of stuff running around out there that was concerning to people. However, that all seems to have been cleared up at least in the past few days. So from our local level and the interactions that I have, people are all being funded. I did fill out the initial form, the disaster loan assistance one. I filled it out, oddly enough, on March 31st, which would have been the first day of the new application. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong on that. However, I've never heard anything back on it. Not that that there was much that I was looking for in it at this point. At least I just wanted to have the application in. I did check off for the $10,000 advance. Again, all I have was my application number and haven't heard anything else back. So not sure, again, where it falls. Maybe I'm just way in the queue. But the PVP one was rather quick.
Yeah, so this is Bob. So I appreciate the comments, and really glad to hear as far as the money got into your account. And that's the whole intent with it being administered by local banks, that they're here in the community, that they'd be able to get a very quick approval from the SBA. So as far as the process, the small business works with their lender. Once the lender submits the application to the SBA, it's an instantaneous approval. I know that from once the bill was signed by the president, the program was stood up in 1 week. And, so we continue to come out with more and more guidance for our lenders. And there's still a lot of questions that our lenders have for us. And I'm waiting for the additional guidance from Treasury and to come to SBA. And it very much is a work in progress, but a lot of clarity has come out, and these loans are being funded, which is helping our small businesses. So very much good news to hear that. And I've heard from other small businesses who, like yourself, have gotten their funding on the PPP. I definitely want to hear from our Massachusetts small businesses once they get an economic injury loan advance. As I mentioned, those were starting to go out last Friday and over the weekend, and they're doing them in batches. So if you did check off for that, that's money that should be coming. But again, I just want to thank John for his comments. I'm going to have to jump off here, but Jeannie, the tremendous work that you're doing as part of the chamber, it really is remarkable how in entire communities, everyone is coming together to help everyone. It really is a historic time, and I know small businesses are challenged, they're hurting. There is light at the end of the tunnel with respect to these PPP funds, the economic injury loan advances, and economic injury loans continue to get approved daily and will continue to get approved daily. I know that there was some talk that it was only going to be capped at 15,000 when it goes up to 2 million. On my call earlier today, right before this, they said that cap is going away. So we have the economic injury loan, which does go up to $2 million direct from the SBA through SBA.gov/disaster. So thank you for everything everyone is doing. I appreciate your support, and let me know if I can help with anything.
If I could have just one comment too that I forgot to mention earlier, and that is if you have constituent businesses that are manufacturing businesses, right now, as you know, I'm sure you've read online or in the papers, there's a shortage of PPE, which is personal protective equipment, among healthcare providers. And so we're starting to see a lot of manufacturers reach out to us saying, listen, I've got manufacturing capability. I've never, produced PPE before, face guards and masks and that type of equipment, but I'd like to. And so there are actually two different portals set up now to connect both manufacturers who would desire to produce PPE and healthcare providers who need PPE, and just some of the creative stuff that's happening. For example, Neshoba Winery for the past week has been producing essentially Purell. They've changed their distillery over to do hand sanitizer from alcohol. So there are a lot of businesses jumping on board. So if you do hear from businesses that would like to be part of that solution, you can route them my way. And I think, Tom has my contact info, and we can get them in touch with, through the portals, the organizations that can kind of match up those who need PPE, with those who can produce it.
Well, thank you. So is there anything that hasn't been touched on by anybody that the other members of this call really wanted to hear about that you'd like to bring up? Nobody? Okay. Well,
Just a quick question, Tom. What is your town decided relative to town meeting, elections, and all that?
we postponed them. We postponed the election till June and the town meeting till June as well. For now, we'll see what happens down the road, right? But as of right now, they're both happening in June.
Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Kevin, a question for you. When you apply for the relief fund, you said that the first one ran out in 24 hours. Do you have to keep reapplying for these, or once you put an application in, it's good until we get through the coronavirus problem?
Yeah, so that was very specific to the state's program that was being facilitated by Mass Growth Capital Corp. Okay, so that's not the federal programs, that we heard about earlier, but that's the state program. If someone applied for a Mass Growth Capital loan as part of that program, they are in the queue. And so, for example, when the initial $10 million ran out very quickly, we then partnered with Mass Development, who ponied up another 10 million. And then now, we're in conversations with the EDA to see if we can get additional funding in there. So, my understanding is that those, loan applications are considered still open, pending availability of additional funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, thank you all for joining us on this call. The other members of the EDC, I don't, well, oh, thank you, John, Kevin, Bob, Jeannie, Brian, Lonnie, thank you all for joining us. I think that's everyone. Thanks again. And also thank you to the members of the EDC for joining as well. I don't think there's any other business to take care of. So I am going to accept a motion to close this meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much for coming, guys. You all have a great
Thank you. Be well, everybody.
Thanks,
Good
Tom.
night, everybody.
Thank
Take care,
you.
everybody.
Stay
Thanks for
healthy.
all you're
Stay
doing.
safe.
Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Tom.
Take care.
Have a good one. Bye.